The Black Studies program at Cleveland State University welcomes you to this season of Images, a public affairs radio forum dedicated to open dialogue on a variety of diverse topics of interest and issues of concern, which focus on the life and experiences of African Americans and all peoples of African descent. By visiting our website at www.csuohio.edu/blackstudies or calling 216-687-3655, you can learn more about upcoming Black Studies program events and activities. Now, here is your host for Images.
And welcome to Images. I'm Prester Pickett, your host for this broadcast of Images. Our very special guest today is Reverend William A. Brewer. Reverend Brewer has an outstanding background as a musician and a leader in our community, as you've heard, as a reverend, a pastor of a church. In fact, he's an ordained American Baptist minister and also an associate minister of the Cornerstone Baptist Church. His background also includes being an artistic director, conductor, and pianist for the Heritage Chorale, a licensed educator with the Warrensville City Schools, and a family man, including being a brother of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. A special thank you I extend to your fraternity, sir, in terms of the support that they've given my family and helping to advance my son's education and extending that legacy of Lewis Stokes and our own Dr. Julian Earls, and also knowing that Jared Pratt is a member of your fraternity. So we celebrate you all here at Cleveland State University with outstanding leadership from your legacy members. Since your history extends back to you coming into the celebration of your talents with music as early as the age of 3, where you're playing the piano and singing, we'd like to have our audience meet you as that young professional who's interested in advancing a career even as an infant. Can you talk about that and your background growing up in the Washington, D.C. area?
Definitely. Well, thank you, Mr. Pickett, for having me on Images today. I would have to thank my grandparents for instilling the gift of music within me. From a very early age. They were very instrumental in helping me understand how to read music, which I feel is very important because reading will take you far when it comes to any performance of music, being if you're singing or if you're playing an instrument. But just them nurturing that gift within me and believing in me that music would take me far in life. Some people have asked me, well, 3 is kind of young. Well, it could be just sitting down at the keyboard and learning how to play C, D, E, F, G using your 5 fingers. And I remember those days vividly. And I just couldn't wait for my grandfather to get home each afternoon, evening, to just take 30 minutes or so with me at our keyboard in the living room and to just play and have fun.
Now, were you learning the notes at the same time?
Yes.
As well as hearing the music and seeing that you could start some compositions of your own.
Definitely, yeah.
I'd imagine there are some early compositions that you could reflect on as you possibly teach others how to play. Yes. Now, you also extended beyond the piano in playing the clarinet, the trumpet, and the flute. How did that work out for you, and how were you introduced to those instruments?
Sure. So in elementary school, I was in 3rd grade, and I saw the band that our elementary school had, and I wanted to be a part of it so badly, but they told me 3rd grade was too early. So I waited a year till 4th grade, and I started first on clarinet for a year, then switched to saxophone for a few years, and then back to clarinet. And then it wasn't until middle school where I picked up trumpet for a year, and to be honest, I didn't like it because of the whole armature piece. I couldn't get it right. I preferred woodwind instruments. So then I ended up picking up flute in high school and was in the concert band, jazz band, marching band, was section leader playing clarinet for each of those groups. So
now eventually your interests advanced you with your education. You acquire a background as a classically trained pianist and vocalist. Can you talk about that route into the study of music to eventually establish yourself as a certified and licensed educator with music today?
Definitely. Well, my grandfather was a classically trained bass vocalist and was actually awarded a scholarship to Juilliard. But unfortunately, he didn't attend. I've heard two sides of the story in terms of my grandparents, but they wanted to get married and be with each other. So that distance between D.C. and New York would have been a little extensive. This is going back to the 1940s. So I knew that I wanted to major in music in some prestigious school in the country and one that awarded me scholarships. That was very important. So it wasn't until my junior year of high school that I learned about Oberlin College. And granted, it was 400 miles away from home. It was a school that was internationally renowned for music and musicians. And so I pressed my way to Oberlin and was awarded close to a full scholarship. My mom only had to pay $3,000 for me to attend, so that was a blessing. And I completed my studies there in 4 years. And then after I graduated from Oberlin, I went off to seminary to earn my Master Divinity degree in Columbus, Ohio, Delaware, Ohio, to be exact. And then afterwards, I pastored for 8 years in United Methodist Church. And I was sensing the call to, well, the whole time, I should say, I've always had a dual call, one in teaching music and the other in pastoring. But with United Methodist Church, I couldn't do that because they wanted their elders to be strictly full-time in the church. So I did take a leave of absence, and during that time, I went back to pursue my Master's of Music Education at the Oberlin Conservatory.
And again, though, so much of what you're doing as an adult, if you would consider that discussion of your latter years after elementary school and high school, you were introduced to these things very early.
Yes.
Again, 3 years old, playing the piano, advancing into other instruments, and 12 years old, I'm told, giving your first sermon.
That is correct.
Can you talk about that?
I remember my home pastor asking me, she's now Bishop Carol Jackson, asked me if I would, give a short message, and I could talk about anything related to it was some structure, but it was based on my favorite passage of scripture, which is Romans 8:28. And I use that as my text. All things work together for good for those who love the Lord, who are called according to his purpose. And I use that as my text, and I talked about how my family was instrumental in my call to not only music, but also to ordained ministry, and just how God has brought me and my family through different circumstances and situations, and to just reveal God's self to us in his glory. And so it was an honor and a joy to have that opportunity. And I felt at home standing behind that pulpit.
Now, going back to your undergraduate experience, let's talk about the way you were able to celebrate your talents on a college campus. When were you called on to perform? Did you engage in activities outside of the music department? There is a great celebration of African American heritage at Oberlin, and in the Oberlin city as well as at the college. So what did you do to stay engaged with the community as you developed your understanding of the lessons in music?
Well, as a music major at Oberlin, of course, I took all the music classes and tried to do as many ensembles as I could. I started off first with the Oberlin College Singers, which was for both college students and conservatory students as well. So that was kind of a foot in the door. But I was also taking piano lessons and voice lessons as well. And oddly enough, it was the winter term of my freshman year that a student had identified me just from being very musically engaged in the conservatory as well as on campus through different events, trying out for the marching band and that sort of thing. She said, well, I'm graduating this year and I'm looking for a replacement for my church job. And the church was Rust United Methodist in Oberlin. So I went, played, met with the pastor and the other music minister there, and they took me on right away. So I was at that church since February of my freshman year.
Now, here at Cleveland State University, we have the excitement with a Howard A. Mims African American Cultural Center to connect back to his legacy, his interest in the Negro spiritual, his interest in jazz music, even establishing the Jazz Heritage Orchestra here as one of his babies, if you will. We also had another director of the Black Studies program, Professor Curtis Wilson, and he was a fan of blues music. Can you talk about how and why these celebrated forms of music that come through the tradition of African American experiences are important to students, even beyond the student who's studying music?
Definitely. So jazz, blues, I mean, they are part of the earliest forms of what I call American music, and specifically for African Americans, originating in the Mississippi Delta and down in New Orleans. Those are kind of like the foundational places. I remember reading an article where Wynton Marsalis once said that New Orleans is the melting pot of sound, meaning that you have opera and you have jazz and you have blues and gospel and all of those genres coming together. And so they are a part of our tradition as African Americans. And so what I would want for students here at CSU and beyond to understand is that the music that we hear today and that we listen to today, it would not come into fruition unless we had that foundation from the past, from those sorts of genres of music. And I'll even throw in Negro spirituals as well. Without that kind of upbringing, we wouldn't have the music that we have today. So it's very important, not only for music majors, but for those who don't major in music, to just take an appreciation course and have an appreciation and understanding for how those genres of music came into being, how they continue to manifest themselves even today, just so you understand and have a well-rounded approach to what music actually is.
Even in introducing students from different cultural backgrounds to the African American experience by way of the music that we help originate here, and it is American music as well as African American music.
That's right.
With that, you have a background that extends into uniting people from different faiths, uniting people from different cultural heritages. Can you talk about that and how music has played a part in helping you bridge those gaps between cultures and even ages? And we're going to follow up with that a little later.
Okay. Well, I've always been a generational man, so to speak. My wife has once called me an old soul. And I'm able to bridge any kind of divides or gaps when it comes to different cultures, people from different upbringings. And so just by pulling people together for one common purpose, and that's just to make music, to sing. My earliest recollection of that was singing with my grandfather in his church in Washington, D.C., Calvary Episcopal, each Lent, Good Friday, as well as Christmas season, be it the Handel's Messiah or John Steiner's The Crucifixion, just different groups of people coming together to sing this music. And then in college, I was the director for 2 years of the Voices for Christ, which was the on-campus gospel choir at Oberlin. And that ensemble bridged students from on campus as well as students and adults from the community as well. And we rehearsed every Sunday evening, and it was just a good blending of different cultures. And like I said, people that want to sing this music because they have an appreciation and a love for it. And what it represents and the message that it entails.
We also reflect on our history with the Howard Mims African American Cultural Center and once having had a gospel choir and realizing that gospel choir was servicing us as ambassadors in the community because they were called on for several engagements, and that then was advertising for the university. So we were a recruitment vehicle with those efforts that you are aware of, and we're hoping to engage you with some upcoming events in that regard.
Sure.
Now, also in terms of the intergenerational conversation, in knowing that you serve as the conductor of the Heritage Chorale and the pianist for the Heritage Chorale. Can you talk about how you came into that and allow us to have a special acknowledgement of the legendary Charles and Sylvia Perry?
Yes, definitely. So I met Charles and Sylvia Perry. It was 2009. And just being engaged with them through efforts with the chorale. I was singing a couple of engagements with them. And then shortly after her passing, the chorale was deciding whether or not to disband or continue. And they voted to continue. And it was in May of 2011 that I acquired the Heritage Chorale, and since then have been working with them. Now, I will say this, and this is for our young people as well that are listening. I did run into, and not just with this ensemble, but just in life in general, run into the age kind of discrimination thing, so to speak, where they'll say, well, you're too young. And I just want to say that it's not about the age. It's about the experience. It's about the newness of what can be shared that's important. And so I breathed a new life into the Heritage Chorale. And we were able to keep the Negro spiritual alive, but also to live more into our experience and motto of celebrating American music, particularly African American music. So that would be hymns and anthems written by African American composers, as well as gospel songs, be it traditional or modern or contemporary gospel. And so that intergenerational piece has allowed us to grow. Now, one of my next efforts is I feel that we are not reaching young adults, youth, the persons in those age ranges, so like 13 through 35, so to speak. And so it is my hope that as a 501c3 nonprofit organization that we can have a branch of the Heritage Chorale specifically for young people and educating them about the richness and the heritage and the relevancy of Negro spirituals as well as African American music. And then at times, incorporate them into our larger ensemble for our concerts. So.
And in bridging the Heritage Chorale into a younger generation,
Yes.
that is easily done as well through the role that you play with the Warrensville City Schools. Can you talk about the work that you're doing with the young people in Warrensville and how they're receiving this music that you're introducing them to that will connect them to that next generation with the Heritage Chorale?
Most definitely. So I started in Warrensville Heights City School District in August of 2017. And since then, the vocal music department at both the middle school and the high school has been my baby. Because I'm birthing it from infancy after the program had kind of dissolved for a few years. And so recruiting students from grades 6 through 12 in all of our ensembles has been a joy. And what really was a highlight for me was in February of 2018, where I had the opportunity to have my first group of high school concert choir students sing with the Heritage Chorale for a Black History Month program that we were having in Warrensville Heights. And that was just amazing. And to this day, both groups have asked, how are your students doing, or how are the people in the Heritage Chorale doing? Sometimes they'll say older, but but they know that despite their age, their voices are still rich and still young and powerful. And since then, we've had opportunities to sing together. They've come to our concerts, both ways. Either students coming to Heritage concerts or Heritage members coming to my students' fall and winter concerts. And it's been a joy to see that intergenerational gap be bridged in that regard.
Now, I'm also reflecting on seeing you give some leadership to the choir, the choral group with Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. So that is to this intergenerational discussion that is engaging you as well. We're definitely wanting to plant a seed on this show with Howard Mims Cultural Center developing an actual garden on our balcony. We would like to think metaphorically we're planting seeds and growing nutrients for the community to be able to grow and develop in the future. So we're courting you in terms of the thought that you can celebrate with us with our Kuumba Arts Festival. And we would like for you to explain to our listening audience, particularly those in the Introduction to Black Studies course, why they should possibly consider attending an event that will celebrate the Negro spiritual, the anthems, the gospel music even that has advanced into our celebrations here at Cleveland State University.
Definitely. I'll begin by saying that unfortunately those styles of music and genres like the Negro spiritual and hymns and anthems have become a dying tradition. And it is my hope, at least here in Northeast Ohio, to keep that tradition alive and to help students understand, and persons of all ages, understand that it is not old music or old people music or music that belongs strictly in the past, but yet the messages that are in those songs are still relevant for all of us today. And so their participation in this upcoming event will be crucial to, in the regard of them hearing these ensembles that are alive and thriving right here in Northeast Ohio, right here in our own backyard, that are singing this genre of music. And not just in the context of, oh, we'll just add this one spiritual to a concert, but to say that, you know, this is a part of our culture. It's a part of our tradition as African Americans, and understanding that it's not just for old people, but that young people can sing this music as well, understand its message, and then hence continue that legacy.
Now, the Kuumba Arts Festival has been inspired by the Black Arts Festival at the College of Worcester and commemorates the legacy of Annetta Gomez Jefferson. One of the things she taught us at the College of Worcester when we were students there was that there was a way for chemistry majors and biology majors to experience Black theater and not necessarily miss out on all of their laboratory experiments, and to be able to say they can contribute an hour, you know, during an evening, and instead of the 3 and 4 hours that a theater major would contribute to a production, possibly again lend that 1 hour. Right. Can you talk about how an individual can integrate their interests beyond their particular studies in other areas into music, and possibly consider supporting us as students in a Kuumba Arts Festival where they will come in for a short period of time and then experience that audience, and we'll talk about that. And also I want to understand from you the element of time and how they will need to manage their time to do these things and how you manage your time.
Definitely. I would say look at what interests you outside of your major. Like, if you know you love music, you know you love to sing, then, you know, be a part of this event. You know, you could sing for it. But I would definitely strongly encourage you to attend. And you may or may not see how attending the program would be beneficial for your particular degree, but in terms of your life, your whole life, thinking, you know, well-rounded, how it would benefit your learning and your understanding of music, and in particular African American music. So that will go for any generation of student. Now, in terms of time management, having completed 3 degrees, it's very important. And one of the things that I've had to learn is to sometimes you have to say no. to folks and to certain events, especially if you're trying to advance yourself and help improve yourself. You can't do anything and everything, but just arrange a schedule, create a schedule for yourself, and stick to it. And that way you can see what has to get done, those things that can be pushed back, but try not to procrastinate, because I know that's right around finals time. But yeah, make yourself available to attend the Kumba Arts event.
With your time management in closing, speaking of time, want the audience to understand how you're balancing your family life with being an associate pastor. One of the fortunate things is that your wife joins you in the ministry, and then your family is involved with that as well. So can you talk about how you personally are managing your life as an educator, a civic engaged individual, an individual making these contributions in so many different ways? How are you managing your time, Pastor?
Definitely. One of the things that I've learned over the years is self-care. And part of that self-care for me means spending time with my family, carving that time out to spend with my wife, Reverend Patrice, or even our three kids, Phaedra, my oldest, Melody, my middle child, and William Kyrie, my 11-month, soon-to-be 1-year-old son. But it's just a joy to be with family, and sometimes we as humans and as individuals can get consumed up with work and always doing something, when sometimes part of that doing is just sitting with family. And so I appreciate the support that my wife has had for me over the years, and vice versa as well. It's a joy to be in ministry together, and to be all worshiping under the same roof, so to speak, because there was a series of years where we were in two separate churches, and there wasn't a Sunday morning that didn't go by where my wife had asked me, okay, well, who are the kids going with today? Are they going with you or are they going with me? But now that we're associate ministers in the same church, that's a blessing.
So simply in closing, what type of piano is in your house, or pianos, and where are they?
So I currently have a Roland piano. I still have the Yamaha that my grandmother bought for me back in '98, but I don't play it as much. But I have a Roland that I bought. It has weighted keys, just like a baby grand or grand piano does. And it's right there in the living room. And there's not a day that goes by where I don't play it, or that my kids will want to play it and learn how to play as well. And so, an
appropriate place for that piano, bringing the family together in the living room.
Yes.
I will continue to say thank you to Dr. Linda Crowell, who is a member of the Heritage Chorale, as well as the individual who was able to reconnect me with the work that you're doing, and then will hopefully join me in trying to recruit you to become a part of our celebration with our Kumba Arts Festival, because the Heritage Chorale invested in us years ago, and we would like to, with a new student center, a new president, a new director for Black Studies, remind our community of how important this music is, as well as how important the entities that you work with are, including even the Warrensville choirs. So we're going to try to talk about how to make that happen. We would like to thank you for taking time out of your schedule today to join us here, as well as thank our listening audience for tuning in. If someone would like to get in touch with us, please call 216-687-3655. We once again thank you for tuning in to Images.
You have been listening to Images, a public affairs radio program produced by the Cleveland State University Black Studies Program and this station. The opinions expressed were those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Cleveland State University, the Black Studies Program, or the station. We hope you have enjoyed the music performed by the Jazz Heritage Orchestra. If you are interested in finding out more about the Black Studies Program, call 216-687-3655 or visit our website at www.csuohio.edu/blackstudies.